Today on the Beginner Photography Podcast, we are learning how to be more authentic in our photography. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast, a weekly podcast for those who believe that moments matter most and that a beautiful photo is more than just a sum of its settings. A show for those who want to do more with the gear they have to take better photos today. And now, your host, Raymond Hatfield.
And welcome back to this week's episode of the Beginner Photography Podcast. I'm your host, Raymond Hatfield. And let me just start off this podcast by saying that if you live anywhere north of, say Florida, then you, like me, are just freezing cold right now. I know that I personally hate the cold. I cannot stand it. I moved out to Indiana thinking that it would be, that snow would be just all gumdrops and candy canes, and it was kind of like that for the first year. But, 9 years later, I'm done. No thanks. I'm done with the snow. I would love to know if, what do you think about the snow? Because I feel like I've talked to people who, born and raised here, they love it, or they're born and raised here, they hate it, or they're born somewhere without snow, they move and then they love it, or they're born somewhere else and then like me, they get here and then they hate it. What camp do you fall into? I gotta know. If it's I will say that if I'm able to be inside and just look outside at the snow, then it's beautiful. It's very pretty. I will say that. If you are indoors, and you're slowly starting to feel that cabin fever, then I want to invite you into the Beginner Photography Podcast Facebook group. I'll probably be sharing some photos of snow, and I definitely am sharing every week photography tips and tricks in little just 1-minute bite-sized videos designed to help you just better understand how to, use your camera. And this month's theme is all about camera settings. So yesterday I shared a video on what are the different camera settings. So if you want to know and subsequently how to use every camera ever, then you can come join us in the Beginner Photography Podcast Facebook group today and learn something new. So this week, real quick, I want to give a big shout out to Matt for recommending today's guest, Jen Pierce. Jen is relatively new to photography compared to, a lot of other photographers who I've interviewed on the show. But when you hear of what she has done and her success, I think that your jaw just might drop for sure. So this week, premium members are going to get all the juicy details on how Jen uses Instagram to book herself brand new clients. And a lot of Jen's success, I think, comes down to just the way that she shoots and how she kind of sees the world to be able to be more authentic with her photography. You'll see what I'm talking about. I really think that you're going to love this one. Let's chat with Jen Pierce. I was reading on your website that 8 of your friends became pregnant at the same time, and then they asked you to do their maternity photos. And that's kind of how you got started in photography, and the rest was history. Is that right?
Yeah, so I have like 8 childhood friends that I have kind of just ran with, since I was maybe 10. And they were all of my friends got pregnant like really young. And I don't mean like super young, but like, they got married early, and I was kind of like the late comer. I just got married last year. But one of them got pregnant, and it was like a ripple effect. They all got pregnant within like a year and a half of each other. And so the first person that got pregnant was like, I really want you to do my birth or my maternity. And I was like, dude, no. I know I have a camera, but there is no way, that I could ever do that. And she was just so, bummed about it. And we kind of didn't talk about it again. And then maybe like a month later, I was laying in the bed and I was scrolling through Facebook. And I don't know if you've heard of Clickin' Moms.
Oh, yes.
So like there was an ad, I'm telling you, your phones listen to you, but there was an ad for like beginners, like birth, or not birth, but like maternity and newborn photography.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like $60. And I was like, you know what? I feel like this is a sign. So I took the course and I texted her, I'm like, hey, I'll do it. I'm going to do it for free because I have no idea how good I'm going to be at this, but let's just run with it. And I think at the time I had like a Rebel T3. I mean, like
Entry
the bottom.
level, yeah.
Yeah. And so like right after she became pregnant, another one of our friends announced it, but her due date was actually before hers. So I started in July of 2014, and then they all just started getting pregnant, and I was like, oh my God, my year is booked. But no, it was awesome to be able to practice and not have like super high expectations and just have people that were thankful for the gift, and that was it.
Of course. Do you happen to remember who the teacher was for Clickin' Moms for that?
I want to say, oh my God, I can't remember. I want to say I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but it was the woman who teaches. She owns a company. I think it's called the Milky Way.
Oh, okay.
And I cannot remember her name off the top of my head, but I
Gotcha.
believe she was teaching it.
Well, I know that there's been quite a few Clickin' pros on the show, so I didn't know if maybe there would have been that connection. But obviously, you had, as you said, you had that T3I. What was your relationship with photography before they had asked you? Why did they think, you know what, we're going to ask Jen?
I feel like I've always just been like a creative person. I have owned multiple businesses. And at the time I got the camera because I owned a boutique and I just wanted to take like flattering photos of the new inventory we were getting in. And I think they just saw how I was photographing that and just kind of ran with it and was like, this will be good. But it wasn't good. It was terrible.
You mean it was terrible looking back on those photos?
Looking back, yeah. Like, I'm like, oh my God, why would you ever hire me? Ugh.
That's funny. So then tell me about, obviously you decided to take this course and start diving into birth photography. And then you did it, right? Like there was no practice before this birth. You just had to jump on in. So tell me what that experience was like.
Yeah, so like there's a really weird thing with birth. Like I feel like everyone wants to get into the industry and they're like, I really want to do a workshop for birth. And I'm like,
workshop.
I don't know how we're going
to,
I'm like, I don't know how we're going to do that because I can only, there's only so many people allowed in the hospital room. And there's no way that I can have you come in with me and me teach you. And there's really not a way for me to like reenact it unless we get a mom in there who's going to pretend that she's pregnant.
For hours.
But birth is just so unpredictable anyways that like whatever I teach you could never happen again in your career. So like it would kind of be pointless. I could teach you the basics, but I don't know. The first birth I ever shot, like I said, was a friend of mine. And I, at the time, I guess, did no research. And so I showed up as soon as she got to the hospital. Beginner's mistake. Do not ever do that. You will be there for hours. And so I think I was there for 17 hours.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah, like so long.
Long day.
But everything happens for a reason. And she had her son on July 22nd, and on July 23rd, I was leaving for a cruise, and I had to leave at 4 a.m. on July 23rd. And so I was like, listen, you have got to make something happen within the next few hours, or you will not have your birth documented because I gotta go. And it just kind of worked out. Her son was born like an hour later, and I was like, all right, bet, this was amazing. But the first birth I shot, like, I was terrified. Like, so scary. Everything is like super chill, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, go time, let's do this, like hurry up. And I honestly wanted to vomit, but now I like live for that thrill, so it doesn't bother me anymore. But I've had some crazy experiences like in the first couple like births that I shot. It's just weird stuff.
As far as like medical things happening or what?
Yeah, like, so the first birth I shot was a vaginal delivery. So like, okay, cool. Everything you see in the movies, you're in there. And, it all went great. I think I thought it was going to happen a lot quicker than what it did, but it's a lot of hurry up and wait. But the second birth I shot for a friend, the one who originally asked me to do it, was a C-section. So, I mean, you're talking like full hazmat gear, like mask. I mean, fully dressed out. Yeah.
But you were still allowed in the OR, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was insane. Like I like both equally, but for different reasons. Mm-hmm.
So it was definitely a trial by fire type learning experience.
Yep. You're just like in there, just like, hey, put this mask on and like come in here.
Yeah. What do you think about that course that you took prepared you best for those first few sessions? As you said, I mean, obviously there's things that can go wrong, but what do you think it taught right?
Honestly, like just to be on your toes with everything, kind of go with the flow and use your situation to benefit you. You always have to be thinking on your feet. You know, nothing's ever going to go as planned, even when it's a shoot, you know, just outdoors. Um, and I really, like one thing that stuck out in my head was she always kept saying, like, when you first start out, take so many photos, overshoot everything, because you don't know what's going to be good.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. Do you find that you that maybe over the years now you've brought that down, or that's still kind of your philosophy in shooting?
Nope, nope. I still overshoot everything. And not like so much. Like I think I would overshoot births and have like 1,200 images at the
Mm,
end. And now I kind of come out with like 600 or 800. So not as extreme as the beginning, but I still like to take shots that like I don't know if they'll be good. And then like I love going through my camera after the fact. I'm like, oh my God, that shot is like amazing.
hmm.
And it's not even something that I planned or thought would be great in the moment.
What do you mean? Do you
So
have an example? Is this like a compositional thing or a lighting thing or?
no. So like I guess like a composition thing. So like birth, you're always looking for that money shot, like when the baby's first delivered, you
Mhm.
know? And so like I'm waiting for that moment for the doctor to like hold the baby up, you know, Lion King, I'm like, ah,
Yeah.
but and that's what everybody wants. But so I have this one specific birth that I had last year. It was a natural birth. She had no medicine. So really she could move and do whatever she wanted to do. And after she gave birth, she like was on her knees, like I'm going to draw you a picture right now, but like you know how the bed sits up and typically your back would be up against it.
Yes.
So she had turned around and was on her knees facing the
Gotcha.
back part.
Hmm.
So when her baby was born, they kind of just like fed the baby like through her legs, and she's like holding the baby, and as most would think like, okay, this is the moment, like everything cool has already happened. But she did this like really cool thing, and that light is like coming down behind her head, and she's holding this baby, and she like, you know, had been pushing for 3 hours. She's just exhausted, and she like threw her head back and just like let out this like big breath. And when she did, the way the light was hitting her, I mean, she just looked like a goddess. And so like I took this shot and didn't think it would be like great, but when I was going through and editing, this shot was like my favorite, and
Hmm.
I posted it. It was, you know, and it's crazy because I feel like I'm still not, you know, the creme de la creme, but like when I saw that shot, I was like, oh my God, I have to share this. And it got featured like 22 times in like magazines and different like like not podcasts, but like different like feature pages on Instagram. And that was a shot that I like never would have took on any other birth, but she just looked so cool and like regal and, you know, like fierce. And I was like, we have to share this.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. Right before this, I had went through your Instagram to do a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
research, and you have featured like stories section or whatever, and I looked through, and you're right. I mean, it was that photo time and time
That
and
was like
time
on
again. Yeah,
everything.
so many
Yeah.
people. And you're right. I think that there was something about that photo which, and I think from like a from a viewer's perspective, and maybe just from like a man's perspective who has two kids. Like I was with my wife
Mm-hmm.
both times, and she's an OB nurse as well. So it's like
Oh
I'm
yeah.
kind of in that world. Like I hear a lot of things that she talks about and how long
Mm-hmm.
labors can be. And just looking at that
Oh
photo,
yeah.
you could see that it was like, oh, we did it. Like
Yeah.
it was this huge buildup, and then that was the moment that she was
Mm-hmm.
happy for. And I think that that's probably why it resonated with so many people. And that's
Yeah.
interesting that sometimes our best shots are just happy accidents.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it just happened that way. That's
I
great.
feel like all of my shots are like that. Like sometimes I'm like, is my tuition off? Like, am I like just not? I feel like sometimes maybe I'm so in my head and I think something is going to be the money shot. And then when I'm editing, I'm like, this really is not the shot that I thought it was going to be. It's always something different.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. That's I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, that's something that I go through as well. But I guess just time will see, and we just learn from those things and figure out what it is. But obviously,
Yep.
over time, you were doing newborns. How did that progress into what you're shooting today? Because it's more than just birth photography.
Yeah. So birth, I mean, I love birth. I think I've always, this is going to sound like super like creepy, maybe stalkerish a little bit, but kind of like how people are so obsessed with like crime and like murder podcasts and
Yeah.
stuff right now. I am just so obsessed with like pregnant women. Like I always tell people, I feel like you could be beautiful your whole life,
Hmm.
but I feel like you reach like your peak beauty when you're pregnant. Like I just think you are the most beautiful version of yourself when you're pregnant. And so like, I think that kind of just like pulled me into, maternity, and I love doing, motherhood stuff. And I kind of gradually just got out of newborn because I love babies, but I really just love the women. Like that's what I feel like is the most beautiful part about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of got away from doing newborn, and so birth and maternity and motherhood is really like my little niche and where I feel perfect right now. So
So you also do things like families and even
mhm.
weddings as well. That's, I'm assuming, a smaller portion of kind of your main focus.
Yeah, I mean, I love weddings. I think I'm more of an elopement, smaller wedding, different, non-traditional type of vibe.
Hmm.
Um, and obviously, so you can't ever accept a birth the same month that you accept a wedding.
Sure.
Because birth could be so crazy, and they could end up delivering on that wedding day. But this year, because of COVID, I've been able to accept more weddings because I can't be in the hospital for birth. Um, so it's kind of taken over my schedule a little bit more this year, and I'm booking more. But because birth and maternity are kind of my thing, I really just pick and choose who or what type of wedding I feel like is a vibe.
Hmm. Gotcha. Gotcha.
My dogs are barking in the background, sorry.
Well, I can only imagine what kind of a dog it is because it sounds very large.
Okay, so she is a lab golden retriever mix,
Okay.
and she is the sweetest dog ever. And if you try to pet her, she would run away because she's a scaredy cat. But she sounds like vicious. We have three of them though,
Yeah,
so
I was gonna say. I was like, oh my gosh, is somebody literally breaking into your house right at this very moment? I'm glad that
no,
that's not the
somebody's
case.
probably walking down the street, and she's
Oh,
just like, "Hey,
yeah. Just wants to play. Hey, come over
yep,
here. That's
hey, come
funny.
over here."
So your main focus is maternity, birth, and maternity and birth. Those are the two main things, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So
Yeah.
one thing that I get the sense of when I look at your Instagram, when I look at your photos, is this feeling of connection between everybody, and obviously very very upfront and visually you're a very distinct editing style. So do you want to talk a
Mhm.
little bit about first the how you build connection while you're I was going to say on set, but when you're photographing your maternity couples?
Yeah. So I think a lot of what I think of in my head is just natural moments. I don't have any kids yet, but I think about how me and my husband interact with each other when we're in their house and when no one else is around. And one thing is it's always the little movements. It's always the like I don't know what I was doing last night, but my husband like came up and like grabbed my hip and just kind of like kissed me on my head. And that probably doesn't seem like very intimate, but when you are kind of in the setting when it's just you two, that's kind of like the most intimate moment.
Hmm.
And that's what I tell people. I don't ever really pose people. I kind of just work on prompts, and I'll say, grab her somewhere that you could pull her in close to you. Or, you know, I love to do this pose where I tell the guy to stand maybe, 10 feet behind his wife. And I always say, sneak up behind her and do whatever you would do if she was washing dishes at the sink and you kind of, surprised her at the house. And it's always something like they tickle her, they whisper in her ear, they give her a big hug, or they, me and my husband, my whole family has done this my whole life. And it's kind of funny, but my grandpa started this with me where he would like tell me when I was a kid, like, give me a kiss. And I like lean in and give him a kiss, and he like licked the side of my face. And so my husband does that now. And so I have a couple clients who do that. And it's so intimate, but it's personal for them. And it kind of works. It's like just their kind of the way that they connect, and it's funny, and,
Yeah.
their natural selves.
Oh, I
That's
love
what I
that.
try to do is I try to just give like a prompt that would be, something broad, but maybe super unique to you as a couple.
Sure, and that
Um,
makes sense. But uh,
yeah.
and that was a great answer. I want to know more about maybe when you just have the mom in the photos, because again, looking
Yeah.
at your Instagram, while a lot of the photos do have him and her together, I feel like a majority of them are more maternity portraits, and just like they
Mhm.
look very strong and very proud. So how do you bring this feeling up when as somebody whose wife has been pregnant twice? I know that they can feel oftentimes insecure about themselves.
Right. So typically what I do is, and this is crazy to think of, and I know people are probably like, wait, you do what? So sometimes before shoots, especially if I've gotten like a new client closet item, like a dress or something, and I haven't seen how it's going to photograph yet, what I will do is I'll put the dress on and I like make a belly of like pillows or whatever. And I kind of just stand in front of my mirror and kind of, pose myself or pull my hair back or touch like what would be a belly or like move or kind of move the dress and what would make me feel comfortable if that's what my body looked like. So when I'm posing them, I'll say, rub your belly or just pull your hair back a couple of times.
Mhm.
Or my favorite thing that a pregnant woman does, and they don't even think that it's like cool in the moment, but when they're like standing with their profile and holding their belly with one hand, my favorite thing to have them do with their empty hand is to just run their hands through their hair. And it just looks like so amazing. They just look so carefree, but like gorgeous in that moment. They're just like messing with their hair, but they're holding their bump. And it just looks so cool to me.
Oh man, yeah. I've never been pregnant before, obviously, but I can see those photos in my head, and I can see me wanting to put those photos of me on the wall. Do you ever take
Yeah.
pictures of yourself with the pillow underneath the dress?
I will do like a whole video. Like when I get new client closet stuff, I will like come out and I'm like, you guys, this is this new dress I got. It fits maternity, to
Yeah.
kind of show my clients, because they'll see a dress on me and they're like, but you're so tiny. And I'm like, but I bought this dress for maternity. It's going to work. Just trust me. So I
Right.
have to like
Right.
show them that it's going to work.
Oh, that's great. I bet that really helps out their confidence
Yeah.
and questions. Yeah. So, what about now this editing style? Because, as I said, I mean, these photos are not straight out of camera. Like
Mhm.
work is being done to your images.
Right.
So, can you describe your editing style to me?
I think that I have been a lot of things. Um, but from the start, what I really was drawn to was like the moody, warm photos. I've never been a light and airy person. Like if
Mhm.
you asked me how to shoot light and airy, I would come up with nothing. It would probably be overexposed and just washed out and terrible.
Yeah.
But you know, it I think I started out a little too dark, and now I'm kind of in this weird thing where like I like it to be moody, but I also enjoy bright whites and like pops of yellow to make it warm. And that's really what I look for. Like I don't want it to be so dark and moody where it feels, I don't know, underexposed, but I like that type of warmth that makes it, I don't know, intimate,
Yeah.
just kind of warm and fuzzy inside. And that's kind of just what I roll with. You know, I dress a lot of my clients, and even if I don't dress them, I'm like, please wear neutrals or earth tones because they photograph well. I'm not a bright person. Like, if you showed up wearing like fluorescent colors, it would not work with my vibe. Like, I'd be like, we got to change you. We got to put something different on you.
Uh,
But everything I try to do, I really like I like a lot of grain, and that's something that I didn't like, or I guess I shied away from in the beginning because I thought grain meant that you weren't great and that your
right.
photo wasn't clear.
Isn't that
But
crazy? Yeah.
I love grain now. It gives it like a vintage, like authentic, just raw feel, and I love it. I think it's so cool.
Mm-hmm. So how does that develop over time? As you said, in the beginning, when you didn't like these things, there's certain things about what you do now you didn't like, and now you love it, and it's part of who you are. So how does that develop over time?
I think that I was trying to fit myself in a box when I first started out, and I was trying to be everything that everyone else wanted. And I was like, I don't love this. And so I just started editing how I liked it. And I was like, if people like it, whatever. But I mean, I still kind of feel like that now. So I just shot a wedding this past weekend, and there was this photo that I did of the bride and the groom in front of this vintage car, and the veil was over both of them, and the lights were on this car, and it was just like this really cool like vintage vibe. And I was like, I really want this just to be like this like yellow hue. And I was kind of scared to post it because I was like, I don't want people to be like, this is so over edited,
Mm-hmm.
like it doesn't even look real, it's too warm, it's too dark, it's too this. And I posted it, and everyone was like, oh my god, you did that. And I was like, you guys like this? Because I really thought that this was not going to be a hit.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think just stick to what you like. sometimes I edit something that's so super warm, and I think that it may be a little bit like kind of teetering having jaundice, but I just like it. But then other times I'll shoot and it's like super foggy and there's no sunlight, and I really like that like grayish blue color that the image pulls, and I'll go with that. So I bounce back and forth between both, but I mean, I just like the moodiness of it all.
Yeah. Do you think that this is something that happens just by accident, like by sliding the wrong slider, or do you think that it comes from seeing others work and trying to figure out how you can do it yourself?
I pull a lot from other people's work. I would say I have like this I have this album on my phone, and it's called just Inspo. And so what I do is I pull from every photographer, and it may not even be like color. It may be like, I like this because there was grain in it, or I like this because it looks soft, or just something weird like that. And a lot of the people that are in the group, if you ever put their photos on one feed together, nothing would match. Like
Right.
it would not be cohesive at all. But there's different things, and I know why I like certain things in their photos. But I will say, being confident in how warm I was making things, I saw India Earl's like Instagram feed, and I was like, you know what? She literally does not care. She
Yeah.
does whatever she wants, whatever fits the image. And I was like, I'm going to start doing this. I'm just going to, if I feel like it needs to be warm, it'll be warm. And if I feel like it doesn't, then I'll pull it back a little.
Hmm.
But it was definitely pulling from other people's stuff and realizing that you don't have to fit into this, you know, box or fill this expectation where everything has to be so cohesive and warm all the time. It could
Hmm.
be whatever.
I love it. So just to recap there, see something that you like, figure out how you can apply it to your own work, and then it's just guess
Yeah.
and check.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. Very cool. Switching gears here a little bit. On your Instagram, I actually read a post of yours that you just bought your first photography studio. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, I
Congratulations.
did.
That's a huge
Thank you.
accomplishment. And
Yeah.
it said that you went from taking your photography business to a hobby to six figures in
Hmm.
just 3 years. Now
Hmm.
that's literally the dream for like so many photographers listening right
Hmm.
now. What do you think is or let me rephrase, what is the one thing that you did that you think contributed most to helping you reach that goal? And why do you think so many other photographers fail to reach such a high level that you have?
You are listening to the free version of the Beginner Photography Podcast, where each week you learn how world-class photographers see and capture the world around them. If you want to hear the extended interview with their best business tips to learn how to make money with your camera, then become a premium member today by heading over to beginnerphotographypodcast.com and click the premium membership button to join now.
Wow, that is something that, again, I haven't dipped my toes into the water too much of Instagram, but kind of how you just shared and broke down how that all worked out for you, and obviously the success that you've had with it. I think that it would be ridiculous for me to not give that a try. So thank you again so
Yeah.
much for sharing all that. That was fantastic stuff.
Yeah. It's awesome.
For those photographers who are still new, they are out there right now. They're wondering, how can I get to where Jen is? Right? They see
Hmm.
you, they follow along with you, and they just got their first camera. What advice would you give to a new, smart, driven photographer who's about to set out on their own creative journey?
I think it comes with it's a lot. It sounds like a lot, but it's like once you know it, it is so simple. My first thing would be, you have to know, shutter, ISO, and aperture. Because I think that's where a lot of people mess up in the beginning. There's misfocused shots. Um, and they think, just for example, I was selling my camera, and someone messaged me and said, can you send me some photos that this camera took?
Oh, right.
And I was like, that doesn't really sell the camera though. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, because it's the lens that was on it that made it look that way. I mean, the camera just composed it all,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not like I don't know. So I would tell people, like, it's never about the equipment you have. Um, I think if someone gave me a Rebel today, I could still produce the same quality work that I have right now. The only reason I have the camera I do now is because I like the focal points and, I like new things. But I would definitely say, like, learn your camera first, learn how to shoot in manual for sure. Figure out what you think you want your style to be. And it doesn't have to be an exact, you know, you don't have to be there yet, but just have an idea. Like I said, I still work on my style every day. I think it changes like every 3 to 6 months. There's something that I don't like about work that I posted, or it doesn't look effortless, or, there's something random I don't like about it, but I always knew that I wasn't light and airy. So figure out what you know that you're not, and work on the things that you think that you are. Um, and then always figure out what your clientele is, because everybody's not your clientele. Um, I know a lot of people that I'm friends with will say, like, all of your clients are like the same style. They're your vibe. They're like, they dress the same way you do. And I'm like, that's intentional, because I know how to photograph them. I know your style. I know what you like. And when it's something else, I feel like I'm pushed up against a wall. I don't know what to do.
Oh, that's really interesting. I hear from so many photographers who kind of go both ways. They're like, photograph a person who's exactly like you because you're going to be able to get in their head very well. And other people who are like, photograph those who are, above you, or like whatever you want your ideal client to be. I'm definitely in the same camp as you there, where I would rather have somebody very similar to me. It just makes things a whole lot easier to get along with. When it comes to those, the developing your style, though, I'm a little bit interested into maybe hearing about what it was 3 or 6 months ago that you decided, maybe I don't like this, that you decided to change. How small are these changes, or how big are these changes that you're making to your photography?
I really loved unposed photos. I think recently I found out that I really love the small details of things. And I let go of posing brides and moms so like traditional and stiff. And it's like what I like to call, and I don't know if this will translate to anyone else, but it's like, I call it static posing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just stiff. It's very cliche. It's very predictable. And I stopped doing that. Like, I love when moms are in poses that it's stuff that they would regularly do. Um, I recently just had a maternity client, and I was like, I'm not going to tell you to do anything the entire time we're shooting. All I want you to do is what you would normally do at home. You know, move your hair from side to side, put your hair behind your ear, rub your belly occasionally, push your shirt back, things like that. And so, 6 months ago, I was editing and posing in a way that just seemed, it didn't look real to me. It looked very posed, a little uncomfortable, and just stiff. And so now I go into it and I'm like, just keep moving the whole time. Move back and, whatever, just keep moving. And that's when they look the most natural,
Mm-hmm.
when they're moving or playing with their kids or throwing them in the air or whatever it may be. But then, like, editing wise, I was doing this thing where I was always moving that clarity slide all the way. Like, I wanted it to be so like rich and clear and defined. And now I'm like, I kind of like when it looks hazy, and I kind of like when it looks just soft and, not so hard, I guess is the word I'm like looking for. And so I try to like back away from defining things so much and kind of just making it flowy.
Mm-hmm.
That even makes sense.
No, it does. It does. That's something that I hear a lot from new photographers, is that's very hard for them, to make people not look as rigid in their poses. So you want to dive a little bit deeper into, when you say just keep moving and whatnot, the idea of showing up to a session and telling, for me, a couple, like, I'm not going to tell you what to do, that's terrifying to me. And I can only imagine that in their heads, they're thinking, wait, what?
They're like, what?
Yeah, we're so awkward in front of the camera.
But the people who say they are awkward in life look the best on camera when you keep them moving. It's so weird to me. And I'm like, you're not awkward. You're only awkward when people tell you how to pose that's not natural to you. That's the
Wow.
only time you look awkward. So I had this couple and they were like, we are so awkward. We are just not like coordinated at all. And I was like, I want you to do something for me. We had like craft beer. They each had a craft beer in their hand and they were holding hands. And I was like, I want you to run towards me. And they were like, we're about to look so silly, so ridiculous. But that was like their favorite photo because they were running like they would normally run. And they looked so like, they looked like they were having fun. And the photo was just funny and they looked natural. But um, like another thing I do is when people show up, and I've had this happen a couple of times, and it's always with men. The women are usually like, okay, I'll go with the flow, but it's always men who are like, you want me to do what? And I'll get there, and they look at me the whole time, and I'm like, the whole shoot, if I can tell you anything, first thing I'm going to tell you is, do not look at me at all. And they're like, what? And they come here and they think that, in my head, and I always say this, two things I always tell my clients, it's literally like verbatim. I need a t-shirt that says this. But two things I always say is one, we are not about to 1998 prom pose this entire photo session. Like we're not gonna like hold each other like around our waist, And then two is I always say, we're not doing Sears photo poses. Like, when your mom would take you to Sears and you sit and you look at the camera the whole time. I'm not going to pose you 17 different ways where you're looking at the camera the entire time. It's just not going to happen. I mean, that's so boring to me. Would you want to look at your album where you may be in different poses, but everyone is always looking at the camera?
No.
And also, when you have little kids, that's never going to happen. They're never going to look the whole time. So I just tell people, like, when you get to your photo shoot, we're going to have fun. I want you to play with your kids. I want you to throw them in the air. I want you to, like, swing them around by their hands. I want you to laugh at them the whole time. Tickle them, make them laugh, throw them in the air, whatever it takes, but don't look at me. And they're like, this doesn't make any sense, but okay, I'll go with it. And the first one of my clients, they're regulars of mine now, but first time we ever shot together, I said, I want you to look at your wife and I want you to get forehead to forehead with her. And he looked at me and he was like, are you trying to make me look stupid? And I was like, I promise I'm not.
He said.
And then, yeah. And then the second time I shot with him, he was like, I really thought that you were trying to make us look crazy. And then I saw the photo. He was like, and it was like my favorite because we looked so intimate, like we really were in love with each other. And I was like, see? But when you tell people to look at each other, the first thing they do is they like lean back and they do this weird chin thing. And I'm like, don't do that. You have 4 chins right now. So
That's too funny. I love it. Just continue to move them around, continue to just give them activities to do together, and that
yeah.
should keep them loose enough, huh?
Yeah. And it's always that little bitty movement that they do when they think I'm not looking or when I'm looking at my camera, but I catch them and it's always like the dad where he like, squeezes the mom's hand or, pulls her in for a kiss, or sometimes he'll tuck her hair back. And I always say, hey, can you do that again really quick? And it kind of gives them confidence because they're like, wait, what I did you thought was cool? And I'm like, yeah, can you just like push her hair back one more time? Or, they'll like rub her belly and I say like, hey, can you do that again? Or I love to do GIFs or GIFs, whatever people call them. I call them GIFs.
I call them GIFs.
And so I say, I'm going to do a close up if you just rubbing mom's belly. So can you just do it like a couple times? I'm going to do like 50 frames. And they're like, they don't get it in the moment, but then when I post it and it's just the dad moving his hand up and down, they're like, oh my God, that was like such an intimate moment for us. And I'm like, that was the point.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Jen, I don't know if there's a better way to end this podcast than that. I don't think that we can top that right there.
Yeah.
As I said, that's one of the biggest complaints of many new photographers is that all of their, subjects look very posed. They look very stiff. And everything that you just shared there the last, 10 minutes or so is pure gold. And I hope that people go back and listen to that for sure.
Yeah.
So I have to thank you so much for sharing everything that you did today. But before I let you go, can you share with the listeners where they can find you online?
So I am on Facebook and Instagram as Jen Pierce Photography. Pierce is in like pierce your ear, spelled the same exact way. And my website is www.jenpiercepics.com.
So much to sit and think on in this episode with Jen. My biggest takeaway for sure was just that, and I struggle with this, I'll be totally honest with you, is that you just have to have confidence when trying something new. Even if you get yourself into something that you don't like, have confidence to try something new, because things don't always work out, and that's life. Even with the best well-made plans, things do not always work out. But if we can just remember that we're never stuck in our decisions, even huge decisions, buying a house, buying the wrong house, taking the wrong job, you can still change your mind. Maybe it takes time, but you can always change your mind. And when you compare it to things like a house or a career, I mean, photography is just kind of small coins compared to that sort of stuff. So I hope that idea makes you feel a little bit freer, maybe a little bit more open to taking a bit of risk that you might not have before, because, you try something new and you never know where it's going to take you. That's it for this week's episode. Until next week, I hope to see you in the Facebook group. We're having a lot of fun in there. And until next week, stay safe. I'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to the Beginner Photography Podcast. If you enjoy the show, consider leaving a review in iTunes. Keep shooting, and we'll see you next week.